The basket sat square in the middle of the porch boards when Owen Garrett opened his door to the first pale light of dawn. And for a moment, he simply stared at it because baskets did not appear on their own, and his nearest neighbor lived 3 miles down the valley road. He stepped forward, the morning chill biting through his worn shirt, and saw the bundle inside move with the slow rise and fall of breathing. His heart kicked hard against his ribs. He knelt, pulling back the corner of a threadbare blanket that had been tucked with careful hands, and found himself looking into the round face of a baby who could not have seen more than 4 months in this world. The infant's skin held the soft green hue of orc kind, and her small ears came to delicate points beneath a cap of fine dark hair. Owen's hands trembled as he lifted the basket, cradling it against his chest, and that was when he saw the folded paper wedged between the basket's weave and the blanket. He carried everything inside, setting the basket on his kitchen table before unfolding the note. The handwriting was careful, each letter formed with concentration, and the message stopped his breath in his throat. "You're the only man I trust. Please keep her safe. I will come back when I can." There was no signature, no explanation, nothing but those words and the baby girl who had begun to fuss, her small fists waving free of the blanket. Owen stood in his kitchen, a man of 32 years who had buried a wife 2 winters past and grown accustomed to silence, and felt the foundations of his ordered solitude crack open. He had no idea who had left this child. He had no idea why anyone would trust him with something so precious. He knew only that the baby was beginning to cry in earnest now, and he had approximately no experience with infants beyond the vague memory of younger cousins in his own childhood. The first 3 days were chaos dressed in tiny clothes, and punctuated by crying that Owen could not always decipher. He rode to the nearest farmstead and borrowed goat's milk from Margaret Thorne, who looked at the green-skinned baby in his arms with wide eyes, but asked no questions when she saw the exhaustion already setting into his face. He learned to warm milk to the right temperature, to hold the small body against his shoulder and pat her back until she burped, to change the cloth diapers he fashioned from old linens. He barely slept, catching an hour here and there in the chair by the fire with the baby sleeping on his chest, terrified she would stop breathing if he set her down. On the 4th morning, he made a decision. He could not simply wait and wonder. He needed to find the woman who had left this child, not to return the baby out of anger or inconvenience, but because he needed to understand what desperation would drive a mother to leave her infant on a stranger's doorstep. He needed to know if she was safe, if she needed help, if there was some way he could make this situation right for everyone involved. He bundled the baby carefully and rode into the border town of Millhaven with her secured in a sling he had rigged across his chest. The market square was busy with the week's trading, and Owen moved through the crowds asking careful questions. Had anyone seen an orc woman traveling alone? Did anyone know of orc families in the area? Most people shook their heads or gave him suspicious looks, but finally, an old trader selling leather goods leaned close and spoke in a low voice. "There's an orc woman been asking for work at the tavern kitchens. Came in 2 days back, looking scared half to death. Might be who you're seeking." Owen found her in the back courtyard of the Silver Bell Tavern, scrubbing pots in a wooden tub, while the kitchen mistress shouted orders through the door. She was younger than he had expected, perhaps 25, with the strong shoulders and capable hands of someone who had worked hard all her life. Her dark hair was pulled back in a braid, and her green skin was flushed darker across her cheeks from exertion. When she looked up and saw Owen standing there with the baby in his arms, every scrap of color drained from her face. "You," she whispered, straightening slowly. Her hands dripped suds onto the flagstones. "You came." "I came," Owen agreed quietly, "but not for the reason you might think. I need to understand what happened. I need to know why you chose me." She glanced around the courtyard, her pointed ears twitching with nervousness, and then gestured toward a corner partially hidden by stacked barrels. They moved there together, and Owen watched her reach out with shaking fingers to touch the baby's head before pulling her hand back as if burned. "Her name is Marisol," the orc woman said, her voice rough. "I named her after my grandmother. And I left her with you because 3 months ago you gave me a copper penny when my purse was stolen at the market. You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. But you saw me sitting on the ground crying, and you stopped and asked what was wrong. And when I told you, you gave me enough coin to buy bread for 3 days. You said everyone deserves kindness when they're down." Owen searched his memory and found the ghost of that moment, a flash of recall he had not thought about since. A young orc woman on the cobblestones, her face stricken, and his own impulse to help because it was the right thing to do. He had not considered it remarkable at the time. "I remember," he said slowly, "but that was such a small thing. Why would that make you think I was the only man you could trust with your daughter?" Her eyes, a warm amber color that caught the morning light, filled with tears that did not fall. "Because kindness to an orc is never a small thing. Because I watched you walk away and not expect anything in return. Because when the enforcer came for me last week, when he said I had to give him Marisol as collateral for my brother's debt or watch him take everything I owned, I knew I couldn't let that happen. I ran. I've been running for 6 days, and I knew he would catch me eventually, but I also knew where you lived because I asked about you after that day at the market. I wanted to know the name of the man who helped me. So I left her where I knew she would be safe, with the only person I believed would not turn her away." Owen felt something shift in his chest, a settling of purpose that he had not experienced since before his wife died. "What's your name?" "Vera Voss." "Vera, I'm Owen Garrett, and you need to know that I'm not going to let anyone take this baby. But I also need you to understand that you don't have to keep running. Come back with me. Stay at my homestead. We'll figure this out together, and if this enforcer comes looking, he'll have to go through me first." She stared at him as if he had offered her the moon. "You would do that. You would shelter me, risk yourself for someone you don't even know. I know you're a mother who would do anything to protect her child," Owen said simply. "That's enough." The ride back to the homestead took most of the afternoon, with Vera seated behind him on his horse and Marisol sleeping peacefully in the sling against his chest. They did not speak much during the journey, but Owen felt the tension in Vera's body gradually ease as they left the town behind and entered the quiet of the valley. His farm sat in a hollow between 2 gentle hills, the fields lying fallow for the winter and the small house looking lonely beneath the bare branches of the oak trees he had planted with his wife when they first claimed the land. Inside, he showed Vera the small second bedroom that had once been meant for children who never came. "You can sleep here. It's not much, but it's warm and private." Vera set down the worn pack she had carried and turned to look at him with an expression he could not quite read. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Owen shifted Marisol in his arms, feeling the solid weight of her, the trust implicit in her sleeping form. "Because when my wife died, I thought I was done with caring about people. I thought it was easier to live alone and not risk that kind of pain again. But then this little one showed up on my porch, and I realized I'm not actually dead yet. I still have the capacity to help someone who needs it, so that's what I'm going to do." The days that followed developed their own rhythm. Vera proved to be capable and tireless, taking over the care of Marisol with the practiced ease of a mother who knew every sound and need. Owen found himself watching her more than he should, noticing the way she hummed low songs in the Orc tongue while rocking the baby, the way she smiled when Marisol grabbed her finger with a surprisingly strong grip, the way her whole face softened when she nursed her daughter in the chair by the fire. He had thought himself past the point of attraction, past the point of wanting anything beyond the simple routines of farm life, but Vera made him feel like a man waking from a long sleep. He caught himself finding excuses to be near her, to bring her tea while she fed the baby, to sit across from her at the table and talk about small things that did not matter, except for the fact that they were talking. She told him about growing up in a mixed clan on the eastern border, about learning to read from a wandering human scholar who had not cared that his students had green skin and tusks. He told her about his years as a soldier before settling down to farm, about meeting his wife at a harvest dance and knowing immediately that she was the one he would marry. "You miss her?" Vera asked one evening, her voice gentle. "Every day," Owen admitted, "but not in the way I used to. At first it was like bleeding out slowly. Now it's more like a scar that aches when it rains. I'll always love what we had, but I'm starting to think I might be allowed to have something else too. Something new." Vera's amber eyes held his for a long moment, and Owen felt the air between them grow heavy with things neither of them was quite ready to say. 2 weeks after Vera arrived, the enforcer found them. Owen was splitting wood behind the house when he heard the sound of horses coming up the valley road, and something in the sharp cadence of the hoofbeats made his soldier's instincts flare to life. He set down the axe and walked around to the front of the house, arriving just as 3 men dismounted in his yard. The leader was a tall human with cold eyes and the bearing of someone who enjoyed the power his position gave him. "I'm looking for an Orc woman named Vera Voss," the man said without preamble. "I have reason to believe she's here." Owen crossed his arms over his chest and kept his voice level. "And who are you to come asking questions on my land?" Marcus Trent, dead enforcer for the Merchants Guild. "Vera Voss owes a substantial debt inherited from her brother, and she has failed to provide the agreed-upon collateral. I'm authorized to seize her property, including any dependents, until the debt is settled." "That's not how the law works," Owen said flatly. "You can't take someone's child as collateral. That's slavery, and it's illegal in this territory." Trent's smile was unpleasant. "The law is flexible when it comes to orcs. Now step aside, farmer, before you find yourself in more trouble than you can handle." Owen did not move. "You're right that I'm a farmer, but I'm also a veteran of the border wars, and I know exactly what the law says about debt collection. You have no authority to take anyone from this property, and if you try, I'll defend my household with whatever force is necessary. That's my legal right." The 2 men flanking Trent moved their hands toward their weapons, but Trent held up a hand to stop them. His eyes narrowed as he studied Owen, recalculating. "This isn't over. I'll be back with proper documentation." "You do that," Owen said. "And while you're at it, make sure that documentation is reviewed by the territorial magistrate, because I'll be filing a complaint about your methods." The men left, but Owen knew it was not finished. He went inside and found Vera standing by the window with Marisol clutched to her chest, her face stricken with fear. "He'll come back. He always comes back. I should leave before he brings more men, before he hurts you." Owen crossed the room and gently took her shoulders, bending slightly to meet her eyes. "You're not leaving. We're going to fight this properly through the law, and we're going to win, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Vera's breath shuddered out. "I've spent my whole life learning not to trust humans. You're asking me to undo years of survival instinct." "I know," Owen said quietly, but I'm asking anyway." She searched his face for a long moment and then slowly nodded. "All right, I'll trust you." The next day, Owen rode to Millhaven and sought out the office of the territorial magistrate, a stern woman named Helena Ross, who had a reputation for fairness and no patience for those who tried to bend the law for profit. She listened to Owen's account of Trent's visit, her expression growing darker as he spoke. "Debt bondage of children is absolutely illegal," she said firmly. "And I've had complaints about Marcus Trent before. He operates in a gray area of the law, using intimidation to extract payment that isn't legally owed. If Vera Voss inherited her brother's debt, she's responsible only for the actual principal, not whatever inflated sum Trent has calculated with his fees and interest. I'll need to see the original debt contract." "She fled with almost nothing," Owen said. "I don't know if she has the papers." "Then we'll start by summoning Trent to present his documentation. If he can't prove the debt is legitimate and within legal bounds, his claim is void. In the meantime, I'm issuing a restraining order. He's not to approach your property or make contact with Vera Voss until this matter is resolved." Owen felt the first real hope since Trent had appeared in his yard. "Thank you." Magistrate Ross gave him a sharp look. "You're taking a considerable risk sheltering this woman. There will be talk." "Let them talk," Owen said. "I'm doing what's right." The legal process took 3 weeks, during which Owen and Vera lived in a strange suspension between fear and something that felt dangerously close to domestic contentment. Marisol grew and thrived, beginning to smile when Owen made silly faces at her, reaching for him when he came in from the fields. Vera relaxed by degrees, laughing more easily, helping Owen with the winter work of mending tools and planning the spring planting. They cooked together in the evenings, moving around each other in the small kitchen with an ease that felt both natural and charged with awareness. Owen knew he was falling for her, knew it in the way his heart lifted when he heard her voice, in the way he found himself watching her across the room and imagining a future that included all 3 of them. He tried to be subtle about it, tried not to burden her with feelings she might not be ready to return, but he suspected she saw it anyway in the way he looked at her, in the way he always made sure she had the warmest seat by the fire, in the way he touched her hand a moment longer than necessary when passing her things. One evening, after Marisol had been put to bed, Vera sat beside him on the bench by the hearth and spoke into the quiet. "I need to tell you something." Owen's heart clenched, fearing she was about to say she would leave once the legal matter was settled. "All right. When I first came here, I thought I was just using you for shelter. I thought I would stay until it was safe and then move on, because that's what I've always done. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Somewhere along the way, I started hoping this could be real. That maybe we could be a family, not just by circumstance but by choice." She turned to look at him, her amber eyes bright in the firelight. "I know you loved your wife. I know I'm not her, and I would never try to replace what you had. But if there's room in your life for something different, something new, then I want to be here. I want to stay, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is where I choose to be." Owen felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Vera, I've been half in love with you since the first week. I didn't want to say anything because I thought maybe you were just being kind because I was helping you. But if you're saying what I think you're saying, then you should know that there's nothing I want more than for you and Marisol to stay. Not as guests, but as my family." She reached up and touched his face, her calloused palm warm against his cheek. "I'm saying exactly that." He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that held all the tenderness he had been carrying for weeks, and she kissed him back with a fervor that told him she had been waiting for this too. They stayed there by the fire for a long time, holding each other and speaking in low voices about the future they wanted to build together. The magistrate's summons came 2 days later. Owen and Vera traveled to Millhaven together, leaving Marisol with Margaret Thorne, who had proven to be a stalwart ally once she understood the situation. The hearing was held in the town hall, with Marcus Trent seated across the room looking confident and smug. That confidence evaporated over the course of the next hour as Magistrate Ross methodically dismantled his case. The original debt, it turned out, had been for 12 silver marks. Trent had inflated it to 60 through a combination of illegal interest rates and fabricated fees. Moreover, the contract specified collateral in the form of livestock and trade goods, not human lives or dependents. When Ross declared the inflated debt void and ordered Trent to accept payment of the original 12 marks, which Vera's brother had actually already paid before his death, Trent's face went purple with rage. "This is an outrage," he sputtered. "The Guild will hear about this." "The Guild is welcome to file an appeal," Ross said coolly. "But I suspect they'll be more interested in investigating your other cases for similar fraud. This hearing is concluded. Vera Voss, you are legally free of any debt obligation. Marcus Trent, you are fined 20 marks for attempted illegal seizure and fraudulent debt collection. Get out of my courtroom." Owen felt Vera sag with relief beside him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they left the building. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, news of the hearing having spread through the town. Owen tensed, expecting hostility, but instead he saw Margaret Thorne at the front of the group, and she started clapping. Others joined in, a scattered but genuine show of support that made Vera's eyes fill with tears. "Seems you've got more friends than you knew," Owen murmured to her. "Seems we both do," she replied. They rode home together as the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Marisol was sleeping peacefully in the sling against Owen's chest, and Vera rode behind him with her arms around his waist, her cheek resting against his back. The homestead appeared as they crested the last hill, smoke rising from the chimney where Margaret had kept the fire going, and Owen felt a deep sense of rightness settle into his bones. Spring came with a rush of green growth and longer days, and with it came the community gathering to celebrate the season. Owen and Vera had been working the farm together, falling into partnership as naturally as breathing. They had not yet formalized their union with any ceremony, both of them more concerned with the daily work of building a life together. But everyone in the valley knew they were a family now. Vera suggested they host a naming day feast for Marisol, a tradition in Orc culture that acknowledged a child's place in the community. Owen agreed immediately, seeing it as a chance to properly celebrate the little girl who had brought them together and to thank the neighbors who had supported them through the difficult weeks. They spent days preparing food, cleaning the house, and setting up tables in the yard under the oak trees. The day of the feast dawned clear and warm, and by midday the yard was full of people. Margaret Thorne came with her husband and 3 sons. The old leather trader from the market arrived with a small carved toy for Marisol. Even Magistrate Ross made an appearance, bringing a bolt of fine cloth as a gift. Vera moved through the crowd with Marisol in her arms, introducing her daughter to people who smiled and cooed over the baby without any trace of the prejudice Owen had feared. When it came time for the naming ceremony, Owen stood beside Vera under the oak trees and spoke to the assembled group. "Most of you know how Marisol came into my life. What you might not know is that she didn't just bring herself. She brought me back to living, and she brought me Vera, and together they've made me understand that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. It's about trust. It's about showing up every day and deciding to love the people in your life with everything you have. So today, we're naming this little one and claiming her as part of this community, and I'm asking all of you to witness that Marisol is loved, she is protected, and she belongs here just as much as any of us. Vera stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. In my culture, a naming day is when we speak our hopes for a child's future. I hope Marisol grows up brave and kind. I hope she knows she's wanted. And I hope she always remembers that she was born into a world that tried to claim her as property. But she ended up with a father who claimed her as his own, and that makes all the difference. Owen felt his throat close with emotion at the word father, and he reached out to touch Marisol's soft cheek with one finger. The baby grabbed his hand and held on tight, and the crowd broke into applause and cheers. The feast lasted into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than any of them could eat. Owen found himself pulled into a dance by Margaret Thorne, who laughed at his clumsy steps and told him he had done well for himself. When he finally made his way back to Vera, she was sitting under the oak trees with Marisol asleep in her lap, watching the festivities with a peaceful expression. "Happy?" he asked, settling beside her. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said softly. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to tell me this isn't real." Owen took her free hand and laced his fingers through hers. "It's real. You're home, Vera, both of you, and if you'll have me, I'd like to make it official. I'd like to marry you, not because we have to, but because I want to, because I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore." Vera turned to look at him, her amber eyes bright with unshed tears. "Are you proposing to me at our daughter's naming feast?" "I am," Owen said, grinning. "Is that all right?" "It's perfect," she whispered. "And yes, Owen Garrett, I'll marry you. I'd be honored to marry you." They married a month later in a simple ceremony in Margaret Thorne's garden, with Marisol serving as the youngest and most vocal witness. The magistrate presided, and half the valley turned out to celebrate with them. Vera wore a dress she had sewn herself from the fine cloth Magistrate Ross had given her, and Owen wore his best shirt and the silver ring that had belonged to his father. When they spoke their vows, promising to stand together through whatever came, Owen felt the last piece of his broken heart click back into place. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Owen and Vera worked the farm together, expanding their fields and adding a small orchard of apple trees. Marisol grew into a bright, curious child who could often be found following her father around the fields or helping her mother in the garden. The community that had welcomed them continued to be a source of support and friendship, proof that fear and prejudice could be overcome when people chose to see each other as individuals rather than representatives of their race. On Marisol's 5th naming day, as Owen watched his daughter run through the grass with the other children while Vera stood beside him with her hand resting on her gently rounded belly where their second child grew, he thought back to that dawn morning when he had found a basket on his porch and a note that said he was the only man someone trusted. He had not understood then what it would mean, how completely it would transform his life, but he understood now. Trust, once given and honored, could build a foundation strong enough to support a whole world. And love, when it was real and freely chosen, could turn strangers into family and make a house in a lonely valley into the center of everything that mattered. Vera leaned against him, her head fitting perfectly into the curve of his shoulder, and said quietly, "No regrets." Owen smiled and kissed the top of her head. "Not a single one. This is exactly where I'm meant to be." Marisol ran up to them then, her small face flushed with happiness, and demanded that they both come see the butterfly she had found in the garden. Owen scooped her up onto his shoulders while Vera took his hand, and together they walked toward whatever small wonder awaited them. A family bound not by the circumstances that had brought them together, but by the love they had chosen to build in the years since that first impossible morning when everything changed. The sun hung low over the valley, painting the hills in shades of amber and gold, and in the distance, Owen could hear the evening songs of birds settling into the trees. His fields were green and thriving, his house was full of laughter and warmth, and the woman he loved walked beside him while their daughter pointed out shapes in the clouds overhead. He had been a soldier once, and then a widower, and then a man alone who thought his story was finished. But life had surprised him with a basket on a porch and a note that trusted him with the most precious thing in the world. And in accepting that trust, he had found his way back to living. The future stretched before them, full of ordinary days and small joys and the steady work of building a life together. And Owen could not imagine anything more perfect than that.